There's a library containing 53 miles of shelving, holding documents that could rewrite history. Letters from Michelangelo begging for payment. Correspondence between the Pope and Hitler. A papal decree excommunicating Martin Luther that changed Christianity forever. And 99% of it has never been seen by anyone outside the Vatican. The Vatican Secret Archives, now called the Vatican Apostolic Archives after a 2019 name change, contain over 12 centuries of documents. 85,000 volumes, 35,000 files, letters, papal bulls, state papers, and records dating back to the 8th century. To access them, you need written permission from the Pope himself. You can't browse. You must know exactly which document you want to see and request it specifically. And even then, nothing after 1939 is accessible to anyone. But here's what should terrify historians. These aren't just religious documents. They're state secrets, financial records, diplomatic correspondence, and evidence of decisions that shaped Western civilization. The Vatican was a superpower for 1,000 years. They documented everything. And almost nobody has seen what's down there. This is what's actually hidden in the Vatican archives. Why the Catholic Church keeps it locked away, and the few documents that have leaked out that make you wonder what else they're hiding. The Henry VIII letters. When England broke from Rome, King Henry VIII wanted to divorce Catherine of Aragon. Henry's response was to break England away from the Catholic Church entirely, creating the Church of England and triggering the English Reformation. That's the story in history books. But the Vatican archives contain 17 letters between Henry VIII and Pope Clement VII that tell a different story. These weren't released to researchers until 2018. The letters reveal that the divorce wasn't about love or theology. It was about politics and money. Henry offered the Pope enormous bribes, cash payments, English military support against the Pope's enemies, even promises to go to war on the Vatican's behalf. The letters show systematic negotiation, with Henry increasing his offers as the Pope continued refusing. It wasn't a religious dispute. It was a failed business transaction that accidentally split Christianity. Here's what makes this significant. The Protestant Reformation changed European history. Wars were fought. Countries were divided. Millions died over theological differences between Catholicism and Protestantism. But the Vatican documents show the split started over a bribe negotiation gone wrong. The Pope refused Henry's money, so Henry created his own church. That's not the dramatic theological crisis history teaches. It's a business deal that failed. The Vatican sat on these letters for 500 years. Why? Because they undermine the narrative that the Catholic Church stood firm on principle. The documents show they were negotiating. They just wanted a better offer. The Chinchon letter. Did the Church suppress a malaria cure? The Countess of Chinchon was dying of malaria in Peru. Local indigenous healers gave her a bark extract from the cinchona tree. She recovered completely. She brought the cure back to Europe, where it saved thousands of lives. Eventually, scientists extracted quinine from the bark, creating the first effective malaria treatment. That's the official story. The Vatican archives tell a different one. Documents from the 1630s to 1650s show that Jesuit missionaries in South America knew about cinchona bark decades before the Countess' story. They documented its effectiveness against malaria in internal reports. But the Church suppressed this information, only allowing its use within the Church hierarchy. Why would they hide a malaria cure, control, and profit? Malaria killed millions in Europe. A cure was valuable, politically and financially. The Jesuits maintained a monopoly on cinchona bark imports for decades. They sold it at enormous prices to European nobility while denying it to common people. The Vatican archives contain price lists, distribution records, and internal memos discussing the strategic value of controlling the supply. Here's the brutal part. Historians estimate 2.3 million Europeans died of malaria during the decades the Church controlled and restricted cinchona bark access. And the archives prove they knew exactly what they were doing. The documents weren't released until 1988, and even then, only partially. Researchers who've seen them say there are additional files still restricted that detail the full financial scope of the Church's malaria cure monopoly. The trial of Galileo, the documents, they still won't release. Everyone knows the story. Galileo said Earth orbits the sun. The Church said that contradicted the Bible. They put him on trial in 1633, forced him to recant, and kept him under house arrest until his death. The Vatican Archives contain the complete trial records. Most of them remain restricted. What has been released shows the trial was more complex than the simple science versus religion narrative. Documents reveal that Galileo had allies within the Church. Cardinals who agreed with him, scientists who supported heliocentrism. The trial wasn't religion versus science. It was politics within the Church. But here's what makes researchers suspicious. The Vatican released selected documents in 1984, declaring Galileo was right and the Church was wrong. But they didn't release everything. Files from the trial proceedings remain classified. Personal correspondence between Vatican officials discussing Galileo is still restricted. Why keep 400-year-old documents about a resolved controversy classified? Historians who've petitioned for access say the Vatican claims these documents contain sensitive discussions of church doctrine that could be misinterpreted. The suspicion is this: the released documents show the Church was wrong about science. The unreleased documents probably show they knew they were wrong at the time and prosecuted Galileo anyway for political reasons. That's more damaging than scientific ignorance. It's deliberate suppression of known truth. The Pius X files. What did the Pope know about the Holocaust? This is the most controversial secret in the Vatican archives. Pope Pius XII led the Catholic Church from 1939 to 1958, spanning World War II and the Holocaust. For decades, historians have debated, did he know about the Holocaust while it was happening? Did he do enough to stop it? Or did the Vatican stay silent while 6 million Jews were murdered? The Vatican archives contain all of Pius XII's correspondence, meeting records, and internal communications from 1939 to 1958. Until March 2020, they were completely sealed. When they partially opened in 2020, researchers found shocking documents. Letters from German bishops to the Vatican describing concentration camps in detail. Reports from papal nuncios, Vatican ambassadors documenting mass killings of Jews. Internal memos discussing whether the Church should publicly condemn Nazi atrocities. The documents prove the Vatican knew. By 1942, Pius X had detailed information about the Holocaust. He knew Jews were being systematically murdered. He knew where. He knew the scale. Here's what the documents show he did. Almost nothing publicly. He made vague statements about innocent victims without specifically mentioning Jews. He never explicitly condemned the Holocaust by name. Internally, he instructed Vatican officials to help individual Jews when possible, but he refused to make a public statement that might endanger the Church's position. Even with the 2020 opening, most files remain restricted. The Vatican released 16 million pages, but researchers estimate there are 30-40 million more pages still classified. Documents about Vatican financial relationships with Nazi Germany remain sealed. Correspondence between Pius XII and Hitler's government is heavily redacted. Files about the Vatican's role in helping Nazi war criminals escape to South America after the war are still restricted. The Vatican says these documents remain classified to protect living individuals mentioned in them. There are no living individuals from 1945. The restriction is about protecting the institution. The Knights Templar absolution. A secret hidden for 700 years. King Philip IV of France ordered the arrest of all Knights Templar on charges of heresy. Pope Clement V supposedly supported Philip's actions, declaring the Templars heretics. That was the story for 700 years. Then in 2001, a researcher found a document that changed everything. Buried in the Vatican archives and misfiled for centuries, reveals that Pope Clement V actually absolved the Templars of heresy charges in 1308. The Pope investigated, found them innocent, and issued a secret papal bull clearing them of all charges. But he never made it public. He let them be executed anyway, while privately declaring them innocent. Why would the Pope absolve them secretly, but not publicly? Because King Philip I would have invaded Rome. The Templars were wealthy and powerful. Philip wanted their money. The Pope knew they were innocent, but couldn't oppose Philip without risking war. So he issued a secret absolution to clear his own conscience while publicly supporting their execution. The document sat misfiled in the archives for 700 years. The Vatican knew it existed somewhere but claimed they couldn't find it. When it was finally discovered in 2001, the Church released it with minimal publicity. Most people still don't know the Pope declared the Templars innocent the entire time they were being tortured and executed. Here's what this reveals about the archives. If this document was lost for 700 years, what else is buried in 53 miles of shelving that the Vatican has lost track of? And how many documents has the Church deliberately misfiled to make them impossible to find? The papal banking records. Where did the money go? The Vatican archives contain complete financial records of the Papal States from the 8th century to 1870. Taxes collected, properties owned, transactions with monarchs. These are some of the most heavily restricted documents in the entire archive. What has leaked out is damning. In 2012, Italian investigative journalists obtained partial banking records from the 15th, 17th centuries. They showed the Vatican operating as a massive financial institution, loaning money at interest which the Church officially banned, profiting from wars by financing both sides and collecting taxes from territories that were functionally extortion. During the Protestant Reformation, the Catholic Church sold indulgences payments to reduce punishment for sins. Martin Luther famously protested this as corruption. The Vatican archives contain the financial records of indulgence sales. Documents show church officials discussing how to maximize revenue, which sins to charge more for, and how to market indulgences to different economic classes. One leaked memo from 1517 discusses pricing strategies for indulgences, including discounts for bulk purchases and premium pricing for severe sins. It reads like a modern corporate sales strategy. This isn't religious doctrine, it's revenue optimization. But most banking records remain sealed. Researchers have petitioned for decades to access Vatican financial documents from World War II, specifically transactions between the Vatican Bank and Nazi Germany. The Vatican refuses, claiming financial privacy for an 80-year-old fascist regime that no longer exists. The suspicion is obvious. The records would show the Vatican profiting from relationships with the Nazis, fascist Italy, and other authoritarian regimes during the war, and those documents stay hidden. The exorcism files, records of demonic possession. The Vatican has official exorcists. They perform hundreds of exorcisms annually, and they document every single one in reports filed to the Vatican archives. These records are completely sealed to researchers. What we know comes from exorcists who've spoken publicly. Father Gabriele Amorth, the Vatican's chief exorcist from 1986 to 2016, claimed to have performed over 60,000 exorcisms. He wrote books describing cases in detail, possessed individuals speaking unknown languages, demonstrating superhuman strength, revealing information they couldn't possibly know. But he also said something revealing. The official reports he filed to the Vatican archives contain far more detail than he was allowed to publish. Medical records, psychiatric evaluations, video recordings, testimony from witnesses, all sealed in the archives. Inaccessible to researchers or journalists. Why keep exorcism records secret? If demonic possession is real and the Church has proof, why not release it? If it's not real, and these are cases of mental illness being treated as demonic possession, why not admit that? The secrecy suggests the truth is uncomfortable either way. Either the church has evidence of supernatural phenomena they won't share. The Renaissance art contracts. What Michelangelo never wanted public, the Vatican commissioned more art than any institution in history. Every painting, sculpture, and architectural project came with contracts, payment records, and correspondence. These documents are in the archives. Many remain restricted. The ones that have been released are fascinating. Letters from Michelangelo to Pope Julius II begging for payment for the Sistine Chapel ceiling. He was supposed to be paid 3,000 ducats. He received 400 ducats over 4 years of work. His letters get increasingly desperate, describing living in poverty while painting one of history's greatest masterpieces. Leonardo da Vinci's contracts with the Vatican show he was paid far more for weapons designs than for art. The church commissioned military engineering from Leonardo, siege, weapons, fortifications, naval designs. Those documents were only released in the 1990s, but many Renaissance art contracts remain sealed. Why? Because they reveal the Vatican was paying artists in ways that violated church doctrine. Contracts that structured payments as gifts to avoid usury laws. Agreements with artists that included sexual favors as compensation. Records of the church seizing artwork from artists who died in debt to the Vatican. The released documents make the church look cheap. The unreleased documents apparently make them look corrupt. What this all means, the Vatican archives aren't hiding supernatural secrets or ancient conspiracies. They're hiding something worse. Evidence that the Catholic Church operated as a political and financial institution that consistently prioritized power over principle. And those are just the documents that have been released. 99% of the archive remains restricted. If what they've shown us is this damaging, what are they still hiding? The Vatican claims restrictions protect privacy and prevent misinterpretation. But you don't need to protect privacy for people dead 500 years. You don't worry about misinterpretation unless the truth is damaging. The secrets hidden beneath the Vatican archives aren't about hidden gospels or alien artifacts. They're records of a powerful institution behaving like a powerful institution, prioritizing self-preservation over truth, profit over people, and political calculation over moral principle. And the fact that 53 miles of shelving remain mostly sealed suggests there's a lot more they don't want anyone to see.